Funding for the production of Folks is made possible in part by the Friends of Louisiana Public Broadcasting.
Everybody's just folks, just plain old folks. Everybody's just people all over the world. Folks who live, folks got to give, folks got to care, ooh, folks got to share. Our world is small, so very small. What touches one of all, ooh, touches us all. So stay alive, just to survive. Folks got to be in harmony. Everybody just folks. Just plain old folks. Just plain old folks. Everybody's just folks. Everybody just folks. Just plain old folks. Just plain old folks. Everybody's just folks.
Hello and welcome to Folks. Tonight we take a look at a situation which has cast doubt on the immigration policies of this country. Just about everyone is familiar with the recent influx of third world political refugees to America. When Saigon fell to the communists following the Vietnam War, thousands of Vietnamese refugees were welcomed to America because of possible political harassment by the new government. When the Cubans fled their country because of possible political harassment, they were greeted with open arms and given political asylum by the American government. But when the Haitian refugees fled their country because of alleged political persecution, they were greeted with less than enthusiasm by the American government. With me is Yvette Smothers, who has been working on this story since the beginning when the Haitians came to New Orleans.
Thanks, Sharon. But the Haitians who came to the U.S. in search of freedom found themselves faced with an unusual dilemma. They were classified as entrants, or refugees, who entered the U.S. legally. Now, the reason for this is because, unlike communist countries, the government of Haiti enjoys good relations with the U.S. government, and so Haitian refugees are being labeled legally illegal immigrants. The U.S. government contends Haitian refugees are economic refugees who have fled their country because of its unhealthy economy. And so far, the government has denied political asylum to each of the 25 Haitian refugees in New Orleans who have requested it. But the Haitian refugees say they should be granted political asylum because of their fear of political persecution by what's become known as the Tonton Macoute, the government-appointed police. The Haitians say their cases are being treated differently because they're black.
Well, Yvette, probably one reason why Americans aren't sympathetic to the Haitian cause is because Americans aren't familiar with the Haitian history. Daughter of France and Africa, wrote Robert and Nancy Heinel in their book, Written in Blood, The Story of the Haitian People. They said it is a place of beauty, romance, mystery, kindness, humor, selfishness, betrayal, cruelty, bloodshed, hunger, and poverty. It is a closed and withdrawn society whose apartness, unlike any other in the world, rejects its European roots. When Christopher Columbus set out to find a new route to India for Spain in 1492, it wasn't America that he discovered, but rather a little island that would eventually become known as Haiti. Columbus named the island Hispaniola and claimed it for Spain. Through legend and folklore, the Spanish believed the newly discovered world was abound with riches, so they searched for gold in the rugged mountains and isolated valleys that formed the Hispaniola Island in the Caribbean Sea. During the 60-year Spanish occupation of the island, the Spanish looked frantically for gold. In their quest, they cold-bloodedly murdered the indigenous Indians who had welcomed them to the island. With the Indians gone, the Spaniards looked for a workforce to mine the gold and raise crops. In 1500, African slaves were being brought to the island in great numbers. By 1659, when the French took over control of Hispaniola, the African slaves outnumbered the Europeans more than 100 to 1. During the 30-year French rule of the island, the name was changed to Saint-Dominique, and the main export of the island became plantation crops tilled by the ever-increasing slave population. The plantation system became so profitable, Saint-Dominique earned the title of France's richest colony. But all was not well on the island. Unrest among the multitude of slaves erupted into a revolt in 1790. Led by Toussaint L'Ouverture, the bloody revolution resulted in a complete overthrow of the French-run government. Europeans were either forced to leave the island or were murdered. The victorious African slaves renamed the island Haiti and set up the world's first black republic. Official independence didn't come until 1904, when Jean-Jacques Dessalines became the first Haitian dictator. Today, Haiti is the second poorest nation in the world, located in the Caribbean Sea not far from Cuba. It's about the size of Rhode Island and Massachusetts, with a population estimated at 6 million. That's more than 400 people per square mile. Now sharing 3/4 of the island with the Dominican Republic, Haiti is a mixture of beautiful hidden valleys and rugged mountains, leaving only 13% of the Haitian land that can be cultivated. For most Haitians, their annual income amounts to less than $90. Adults eat less than 2,000 calories a day, and their life expectancy is 33 years. The official written language in Haiti is French, but the national spoken language is Creole, a mixture of French and West African dialects. For the majority of Haitians, their religion is a mixture of Catholic belief and West African religious beliefs and rituals, which is known around the world as voodoo. The people who call themselves Haitians are of two distinct cultures. The Noirs, who are the direct descendants of the slaves, make up the uneducated masses. The educated minority, which is usually the ruling class, are called Mulattoes, who are descendants of mixed African and European ancestry. In September of 1980, and again in July of 1981, 2 boatloads of Haitians left their country headed for Miami. The first group got lost at sea and finally ended up anchoring near the Louisiana coast. The second boat broke up on the water, and the Haitians on board were rescued by the U.S. Coast Guard. In all, there were about 102 Haitians who somehow made their way to New Orleans, most of them young, middle-aged men, all of them poor, confused, and asking in their native Creole language for asylum in the United States.
To begin with, I think that it is only a political matter, joined with obviously economic hardships. And it's very difficult, obviously, to have a clear cut between economic and politics, because in the third world, nothing can be done unless it is done with the blessing of the government.
Father Patty Pooh, an exiled Haitian Episcopal priest, now a naturalized American citizen, thinks there is something very wrong in Haiti today. He was a young priest when he was told himself to leave Haiti because of his political views in the 50s. Today, he's the director of the Haitian Refugee Center in New Orleans, which is trying to help other Haitian nationals escape the political tyranny that he says has torn Haiti apart.
History will teach us that at the outset, Haiti has never been received in the concert of the nations of the free world, ever since Haiti became independent in 1804.
Haitian history has always been a history of battles and bloodshed. After the bloody and violent slave revolts of the late 1700s, the bloodshed continued with an estimated 200 more revolutions, coups, insurrections, and civil wars. The Western world curtailed trade with the island nation because of its political instability. The trade embargo isolated Haiti from modern technology for more than 100 years. In 1915, Haiti's strategic Caribbean position but failing economy brought the U.S. Marines to the island to protect American interest. The Marines stayed in Haiti for 19 years, helping to establish a stable government that was friendly to the United States. In 1957, Francois Papadoc Duvalier became president and self-declared dictator of Haiti for life. The reign of Papadoc, which was supported by Washington, D.C., was allegedly coated in blood with reports of murder and torture of suspected Duvalier dissidents. Shortly before Papadoc died in 1971, he named his son, Jean-Claude, president for life. 11 years later, Jean-Claude Duvalier, also known as Baby Doc, is alleged to not only be carrying out his father's dictator rule, but also continuing the reign of terror over the Haitian people.
In any dictatorial regime whereby the king is God, the king is the high priest, meaning that you see they have power of death and life over people. So meaning that, or you are with them or you are against them. You just cannot stay neutral.
The Haitian boat people who came to New Orleans seeking asylum weren't political figures at home, but instead they were farmers or fishermen. Most of them feared for their lives if they were forced to go back to Haiti and answer to the Tonton Macoute, the government's secret police said to specialize in torture.
I got problem in my country because I got plenty family right now. I can tell you everything. Because when I tell you everything right now, I don't know what somebody do in my country by my family. I have a problem in Haiti. Right now, I can't come in back.
Are you afraid if you go back to Haiti that the police at Tonton Macoute will hurt you?
No, I'm going Haiti. I don't know, I'm going to visit. Okay, no stay a long time. Okay, all right, no stay a long time. I don't know this. Tonton Macoute, okay, me I don't like me, okay. I don't like me.
It is for real, and in fact, this is the kind of extra police corps that is protecting the regime, because the regime, when the regime saw that they could not count on the army, because you are in South America, don't forget it, they could not count on any other institutions, then they had to create their own police.
I see New Orleans, all police got respect. He can't hit nobody. And in my country, not same thing. When you do something no good, somebody want kill you, he kill you. He want hit you, he hit you. That's all. Some people is coming down here, he no lack for his coming back.
The New Orleans Immigration and Naturalization Office wasn't impressed with the Haitians' request to stay in the States for political reasons. INS District Director Edwin Chauvin says the Haitians just didn't present enough evidence to justify granting them political asylum. So they remained in custody at the Community Correctional Center, where they were jailed for more than a year.
The second side of it is, when you say they're economic refugees, the kinds of problems that people are fleeing from in Haiti are no less severe than the kinds of problems people are fleeing from in Poland. But the economic problems suffered by the Haitian people, just as the economic problems suffered by the Polish people, is a problem created by the government and a problem allowed to continue to exist by the government. And to that extent, if you're going to call the Poles who are fleeing Poland and come into the United States political refugees, surely you have to say that the Haitians are also.
25 of the Haitians, acting through their New Orleans attorney James Gray, filed suit against the U.S. government for what they considered an unnecessary and illegal incarceration. After being jailed 9 months, 17 decided to drop the charges and go back to Haiti.
The people who were here, and I knew them all, I talked to them quite a bit, and I talked to them before they went back. As far as I knew before they left, basically they had given up hope that they would ever get out of jail. And they were saying things to me like, if I'm going to die, I may as well die at home instead of dying here in jail. And you have to remember that they were in a jail where, one, they couldn't speak the language of the jailers. So they couldn't say simple things like, I have a headache, I'm sick, or any of those things. I mean, they just couldn't communicate. Two, the conditions were very different from what they were used to. Most of them had gotten pretty desperate and had pretty much given up hope about what was going on here in the United States. And to the man, they were saying, yes, I believe I may die if I go home, but if I must die, I'd rather die at home than here in jail.
There were conflicting rumors circulating among the Haitians who stayed in New Orleans about the ones who had gone back home. Some said their friends were paid to get out of the U.S. Others said they were killed when they got to Haiti. The INS sent an investigator to Haiti to find out for sure. The information that came back said 16 of the 17 Haitians who returned were alive and well in their homeland. The other one could not be found. For the Haitians who stayed in the States, their adjustment to American culture was just beginning. After more than a year of incarceration, the remaining Haitians were released on parole.
97% of the Haitians that were in our program only spoke Creole or spoke very little English. Most of the Haitians who arrived in the United States are from a rural or fishing background. So their encounter with modern complex society is usually pretty traumatic for them.
The basic characteristics would be that you're dealing with a single 24 to 27 years male person who speaks very little English, second or third grade level, very uneasy with gadgets and technological gimmicks that we have, accustomed to a very simple life, very aware of not being totally and fully accepted in this society.
Mostly trying to establish themselves as jobs to better themselves in position-wise. Because when they were in Haiti, they didn't have jobs, no money, no clothing or anything. Most of the guys is here have families, and they sending their kids back to school, trying to give them a better life than in what they had. In order to do that, they had to leave their family to come here to work.
You have to teach them. It's like anything else. They need to be shown what to do with different things.
Are they willing to adjust to society?
By and large, I think they are to a degree. They have some little idiosyncrasies that they seem to prefer to stick to. They don't seem to be willing enough, or several of them don't, to try to learn English. They're quite comfortable to get together in their own little masses and just rattle off in Creole. But in my opinion, I tell them all the time, I say, look, you're in New Orleans, you're not in Port-au-Prince, you're not in Haiti now, and you have to learn to adjust, because my wife and I, Father Pooh, and the other people who have been working along with you are not going to be around 24 hours a day, nor all the time.
Just about all of the Haitians have found jobs and are slowly starting an adjustment from their familiar Haitian way of life to that of America. The labor they qualify for is unskilled and jobs most Americans don't want.
Americans won't do these kind of jobs to a great extent. I think they have a different attitude. They are much more willing, maybe, than the Americans. You don't very often get the thing, you know, with an American, very often you'll tell them, it's not my job, I'm not going to do it. Well, you don't really get that so much with the Haitians. They'll, if you ask them to do something, as a general rule, they won't give you an argument, they'll go and do it.
Oh, you have to, with the speaking different languages, you mostly have to show them what has to be done to work with them. They didn't know what a mop, a broom, anything were when they first came. You know, when I would say get a mop, they didn't know what I was talking about. I had to show them, this is a mop, this is a broom, this is a vacuum cleaner.
Missile people help everybody Asian. You know can write, missile people write for we. Mr. One for write, Mr. One for help Asian people. Everybody in the Sinister Hotel lack Asian people. You tell Asian people, hello, how you doing? Okay, I'm fine. But this is in the Hana Este. This is in the talking English. In Haiti, I need nothing for English.
They have to learn very essential life skills. As is the case probably with most refugees, we had to develop instructional programs on the use of stoves, when to put the trash out, paying utility bills, paying the rent, a number of just basic fundamental things that we perform daily. they had to learn.
Wessner has been about 3 months now, and he's working good. I have no problems with him. He's a quiet person, really trying to learn. He's trying to learn about it. You know, he's eager to learn. And I just hope that it'll pan out and he'll stay with me.
Public opinion in New Orleans has been sympathetic to the Haitian cause since the beginning of their ordeal. When the Haitians were incarcerated, a group of angry protesters rallied downtown to demand their release. Today, with the plight of the Haitians still uncertain, many feel the boat people are still getting a raw deal from the American government.
As long as they work, I think they have a right to stay here. That's what our country's all about. It belongs to everybody. If a person's in trouble, this is a haven for them. If they want to be good citizens and work, this is where they belong.
They are treated like human beings here. They're treated like the American people. And there, they wasn't, from my understanding, they wasn't treated like that. You were in a village, and that's where you stayed.
I really think that the real question is whether or not there will be a policy change in Washington. The law in this area is very restrictive. Your rights to appeal is very limited. The right to review once you get that appeal is very limited. And I think that as long as Washington decides that it's going to issue directives to deny asylum to Haitian refugees, I think that's going to happen. I thought that there was plenty enough evidence to justify the granting of asylum in the hearings that we had. I was disappointed with the result. The truth is, I think that sooner or later, there's going to be political unrest in Haiti to the extent that that government will not be able to continue to function the way it is. I think that unrest is most likely to come from Haitians who've had an opportunity to see a little more freedom than what they're used to. And even though we've talked about how unfairly they're being treated here, the fact is, as they look around, as they talk to Americans, one of the things they're going to get from us is an idea that maybe freedom is available to them, even back in Haiti, if they just reach out and take it. You know, and for that reason, I think that's the reason the Haitian government is so afraid of the returnees, because it has to feel that these people who've been in contact with all these radical lawyers and all of these radical community groups who are going to rally around their cause, one of the things they're going to feel when they go back to Haiti is that maybe they should not tolerate the situation as it is.
For the time being, the Haitians in New Orleans who entered the country illegally will be allowed to stay, but money for the Haitian Refugee Center and other resettlement support funds have run out. Most of the Haitians, if they're not already self-supporting, will have to be when their appeal is presented to the Board of Immigration and Appeal in Falls Church, Virginia, or face deportation for sure.
You see that the situation of the Haitian refugees has not been solved yet. It is only postponed.
In the Bahamas, there are 25,000 Haitian refugees who have fled their country and are waiting to come to the United States. But for those Haitian refugees who remain here, awaiting a determination on their status, their fate is uncertain.
Yvette, when is this whole question about the Haitian refugees finally going to be cleared up?
Well, Sharon, I spoke with Attorney James Gray, and he says it could be weeks, it could be months, or even years before the legal battle is over.
Well, thank you for a very enlightening report on the Haitian refugees, and we hope that you join us again next week for Folks. Funding for the production of Folks is made possible in part by the Friends of Louisiana Public Broadcasting.